Good morning, philosophers. Let's continue. Well, imagine that nature is saying to you, quote, "Those things you grumble about are the same for everyone. I can give no one anything easier, but anyone who likes may make them easier for himself. How? By viewing them with equanimity." I did this yesterday, didn't I? Equanimity. You must needs experience pain and hunger and thirst and grow old, assuming that you are vouchsafed a relatively long stay among men, and be ill and suffer loss and finally perish. But you needn't believe the chatter of the people around you. There's nothing in all this that's evil, insupportable, or even hard. Those people are afraid of these things by a kind of general consent. Are you going to feel alarm at death, then, in the same way as you might at some common report? What could be more foolish than a man's being afraid of people's words? My friend Demetrius has a nice way of putting things when he says, as he commonly does, that to him the utterances of the unenlightened are as noises emanating from the belly. What difference does it make to me, he asks, whether their rumblings come from their upper or their nether regions? What utter foolishness it is to be afraid that those who have a bad name can rob you of a good one. Just as the dread aroused in you by some common report has proved groundless, so too is the dread of things of which you would never be afraid if common reports did not tell you to be. What harm could ever come to a good man from being besmirched by unwarranted gossip? We shouldn't even let it prejudice us against death, which itself has an evil reputation. Yet none of the people who malign it has put it to the test. Until one does, it's rather rash to condemn a thing one knows nothing about. And yet one thing you do know, and that is this. How many people it's a blessing to, how many people it frees from torture, want, maladies, suffering, weariness. And no one has power over us when death is within our own power. A lot of really heavy stuff in that last paragraph. Okay, on to letter 104. I have got away to my place at Nomentum. Getting away from what? Guess. The city? No, a fever. And just as it was infiltrating my defenses, too, it had already taken a hold on me, my doctor being decided in his opinion that a disturbed, irregular pulse, its natural rhythm upset, was the start of it. Whereupon I immediately ordered my carriage out, and although my Paulina tried to hold me back, instead on driving away. I kept saying the same thing as my mentor Gallio when he started sickening for a fever in Archaea. He immediately boarded a ship, assuring everyone that the disorder was to be put down to the place where he was living and not to his constitution. I told Paulina this. She is forever urging me to take care of my health, and indeed, as I come to realize, the way her very being depends on mine, I am beginning, in my concern for her, to feel some concern for myself. So, although old age has made me better at putting up with a lot of things, here I am coming to lose this advantage of being old. The notion occurs to me that inside this old frame there exists a young man as well, and one who is always less severe on a young man. The consequence is that since I haven't managed to get her to put a little more bravery into her love for me, she has managed to induce me to show a little more love and care for myself. For concessions have to be made to legitimate emotions. There are times when, however pressing one's reasons to the contrary, one's dying breath requires to be summoned back and held back even as it is passing one's lips, even if this amounts to torture, simply out of consideration for one's dear ones. The good man should go on living as long as he ought to, not just as long as he likes. The man who does not value his wife or a friend highly enough to stay on a little longer in life, who persists in dying in spite of them, is a thoroughly self-indulgent character. This is a duty which the soul should also impose on itself when it is merely the convenience of near and dear ones that demands it, and not only if and when it feels the wish to die, but also if and when it has begun to carry out the wish. It should pause a while to fit in with their interests. To return to life for another's sake is a sign of a noble spirit. It is something that great men have done on a number of occasions. Yet to give your old age greater care and attentiveness in the realization that this pleases any of the persons close to you, or is in their interests, or would be likely to gratify them, and this in spite of the fact that the greatest reward of that period is the opportunity it gives you to adopt a relatively carefree attitude towards looking after yourself, and a more adventurous manner of living, is also, to my mind, a mark of the highest possible kindness. Besides, it brings you more than a little pleasure and recompense, for can anything be sweeter than to find that you are so dear to your wife that this makes you dearer to yourself? So it comes about that my Paulina succeeds in making me responsible for anxiety of my own as well as hers on my behalf. I expect you're keen to hear what effect it had on my health, this decision of mine to leave. Well, no sooner had I left behind the oppressive atmosphere of the city, and that reek of smoking cookers which pour out, along with a cloud of ashes, all the poisonous fumes they have accumulated in their interiors whenever they're started up, then I noticed the change in my condition at once. You can imagine how much stronger I felt after reaching my vineyards. I fairly waded into my food. Talk about animals just turned out onto spring grass. So by now I am quite my old self again. That feeling of listlessness, being bodily ill, at ease, and mentally inefficient didn't last. I'm beginning to get down to some wholehearted work. This is not something, however, to which mere surroundings are conducive, unless the mind is at its own disposal, able at will to provide its own seclusion, even in crowded moments. On the contrary, the man who spends his time choosing one resort after another in a hunt for peace and quiet will, in every place he visits, find something to prevent him from relaxing. The story is told that someone complained to Socrates that traveling abroad had never done him any good, and received the reply, quote, "What else can you expect, seeing that you always take yourself along with you when you go abroad?" End quote. What a blessing it would be for some people if they could only lose themselves. As things are, these persons are worried and a burden, a source of demoralization and anxiety to their own selves. What good does it do you to go overseas, to move from city to city? If you really want to escape the things that harass you, what you're needing is not to be in a different place, but to be a different person. Suppose you've arrived in Athens, or suppose it's Rhodes. Choose any country you like. What difference does the character of the place make? You'll only be importing your own with you. You'll still look on wealth as a thing to be valued. Your poverty will be causing you torment, while, this being the most pathetic thing about it all, your poverty will be imaginary. However much you possess, there is someone else who has more. And you'll be fancying yourself However much you possess, there's someone else who has more, and you'll be fancying yourself to be short of things you need to the exact extent to which you lag behind them. Another thing that you'll regard as something to be valued is success in public life, in which case you're going to feel resentment when so-and-so is elected consul, or when so-and-so is re-elected for that matter, and be jealous whenever you see a person's name appearing too often in the honors lists. Your ambition will be running at so feverish a pitch that if anyone's ahead of you in the race, you'll see yourself as coming last. Death you'll think of as the worst of all bad things, though in fact there's nothing bad about it at all except the thing which comes before it, the fear of it. You'll be scared stiff by illusory as well as genuine dangers, haunted by imaginary alarms. What good will it do you to, quote, have found a route past all those Argive forts, and one escape right through the enemy's lines? End quote. Peace itself will supply you with new fears. If your mind has once experienced the shocks of fright, you'll no longer have any confidence, even in things which are perfectly safe. Once it has acquired the habit of unthinking panic, it is incapable even of attending to its own self-preservation, for it runs away from dangers instead of taking steps to avert them, and we're far more exposed to them once our backs are turned. To lose someone you love is something you'll regard as the hardest of all blows to bear, while all the time this will be as silly as crying because the leaves fall from the beautiful trees that add to the charm of your home. Preserve a sense of proportion in your attitude to everything that pleases you, and make the most of them while they are at their best. At one moment chance will carry off one of them, at another moment another. But the falling of the leaves is not difficult to bear since they grow again, and it is no more hard to bear the loss of those whom you love and regard as brightening your existence. For even if they do not grow again, they are replaced. Quote, but their successors will never be quite the same, end quote. No, and neither will you. Every day, every hour sees a change in you. Although the ravages of time are easier to see in others, in your own case they are far less obvious, because to you they do not show. While other people are snatched away from us, we are being filched away surreptitiously from ourselves. Are you never going to give any of these considerations any thought, and never going to apply any healing treatment to your wounds, instead of sowing the seeds of worry for yourself by hoping for this or that, or despairing of obtaining this or that other thing? If you're sensible, you'll run the two together, and never hope without an element of despair, and never despair without an element of hope. What good has travel of itself ever been able to do anyone? It has never acted as a check on pleasure or a restraining influence on desires. It has never controlled the temper of an angry man or quelled the reckless impulses of a lover. Never, in fact, has it rid the personality of a fault. It has not granted us the gift of judgment. It has not put an end to mistaken attitudes. All it has ever done is distract us for a little while, through the novelty of our surroundings, like children fascinated by something they haven't come across before. The instability, moreover, of a mind which is seriously unwell is aggravated by it, the motion itself increasing the fitfulness and restlessness. This explains why people, after setting out for a place with the greatest of enthusiasm, are often more enthusiastic about getting away from it. Like migrant birds, they fly on, away even quicker than they came. Travel will give you a knowledge of other countries. It will show you mountains whose outlines are quite new to you, stretches of unfamiliar plains, valleys watered by perennial streams. It will allow you to observe the unique features of this or that river, the way in which, for example, the Nile rises in summer flood or the Tigris vanishes from sight, and at the completion of its journey through hidden subterranean regions is restored to view with its volume undiminished. Or the way the meander, theme of every poet's early training exercises, winds about loop after loop and again is carried close to its own bed and then once more diverted into a different course before it can flow into its own stream. But travel won't make a better or saner man of you. For this we must spend time in study and in the writings of wise men, to learn the truths that have emerged from their researches, and carry on the search ourselves for the answers that have not yet been discovered. This is the way to liberate the spirit that still needs to be rescued from its miserable state of slavery. So long, in fact, as you remain in ignorance of what to aim at and what to avoid, what is essential and what is superfluous, what is upright or honorable conduct and what is not, it will not be traveling, but drifting. All this hurrying from place to place won't bring you any relief, for you're traveling in the company of your own emotions, followed by your troubles, all the way. If only they were really following you, they'd be farther away from you. As it is, they're not... Excuse me. Excuse me. If only they were really following you, they'd be farther away from you. As it is, they're not at your back, but on it. That's why they weigh you down, with just the same uncomfortable chafing wherever you are. It's medicine, not a particular part of the world, that a person needs if he's ill. Suppose someone has broken his leg or dislocated a joint. He doesn't get into a carriage or board a ship. He calls in a doctor to have the fracture set or the dislocation reduced. Well then, when a person's spirit is wrenched or broken at so many points, did you imagine that it can be put right by a change of scenery? That sort of trouble isn't so serious that it can't be cured by an outing? All right, we'll leave it there. Find people that disagree with you. I say this so often, and I don't care. I'm going to say it again because it just happened again in my life today. Find people that disagree with you, that are principled, that are good people that you can trust, and when they disagree with you, appreciate them for it. Welcome it. Thank them. Take their feedback. See if there are compromises that can, middle grounds that can meet both objectives. It's so amazing how I can think my plan is the best plan forward to execute on whatever goal I have. I can think about it. I can get excited about it. I can be sure this is the right one. And then somebody I trust can come along and be like, wow, I really think you need to rethink that, or I really think you need to consider this perspective. And if you have those people, you'll get that feedback. And you'll get that feedback, and you have a choice. You can reject it and trudge on ahead, which sometimes is the right answer. But it always, like, if it's coming from people you trust, it's always worth considering. It's always worth evaluating your plan to see if it can be toned down or toned up or refactored slightly to maybe avoid some obstacle, some unnecessary obstacle you were going to create for yourself. I know I'm being incredibly vague, so this is probably just annoying to listen to, but repeatedly, I have people in my life that are able to change my course, to change my plan in very real, tangible, immediate ways by doing this. And it's one of the world's greatest treasures. But it's all about curating the people that you have around you. I mean, that's where it starts. Surround yourself by good people, intelligent people, moral people, principled people. Outright reject any that aren't. Just keep them away from you. Be the type of person that's deserving of a friends list like that, so to speak. Be deserving of having those people around you. Find people that are doing the same. You're all gonna be so much better off for it. Sorry for the vague comments. It doesn't make sense to talk about specific personal details, but hopefully those thoughts are helpful for you. Have a good day, guys.